Hello again, dear ones. And so today's title, as you have heard, is The Power of Zeal and the Parable of the Talents. And so when your board of trustees and my husband, Denny, asked me the same question, why are you speaking on Sunday when you're supposed to be on vacation? My answer was the same. It's the parable of the talents. I cannot not speak the day we kick off the parable of the talents. When I first joined Unity of the Keys in 2016, that was 5 years ago now, this program was on the horizon. It was on the calendar. And our church lady at the time, Eileen Quinn, thoroughly educated me about this annual event. I understood that it was introduced by Reverend Phil Smedstead, and that was something that the congregation looked forward to every year. And I was intrigued. I was intrigued as it was described to me, how members of the congregation use this event to think outside the box, to feel the freedom of creativity, and to express themselves through this program as perhaps not in the same way as throughout the rest of the year. I got a sense of the excitement around this event, both in the creation of items and services to sell, and in participation in the sale itself, in purchasing things that were created by people that we know. And I had heard of, and I had read of programs such as this, where people are given seed money to purchase whatever they need for their product or their services, and find a way to increase, to multiply based on that seed money, that which they bring into fruition to benefit others. But I had never participated in it personally. And so I was hooked. I was intrigued also because the parable of the talents, which comes to us from the Gospel of Matthew, was not a parable that I easily embraced. And so I saw this as an opportunity to learn something new, to see this from a different perspective, and to expand my own understanding of the parable and its application in our lives. So let's look at a little background first about the parable of the talents. Jesus is addressing his followers in this parable. There are 5 major discourses that are attributed to Jesus in Matthew's gospel. And this is part of the last teaching block that begins in chapter 24. Jesus and his disciples had just come out of the temple, and his disciples were admiring the beautiful buildings and the grandeur of the temple. And Jesus had warned them of the temple's coming destruction. Then they all walked together to the Mount of Olives. And the gospel tells us that the disciples came to Jesus privately and quietly with their questions about the destruction of the temple. And it is in this setting that this parable is told. And so this is private instruction to insiders, those who are closest to Jesus, his closest followers. This parable is not directed to the crowds, but to those who know Jesus best and who know Jesus's teachings the best. And so we know this parable more or less. It's from Matthew 25, verses 14 through 30. So sit back, get comfortable, and let's listen to it one more time this morning. For it will be as when a man going on a journey called his servants and entrusted them to his property. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to his ability. Then he went away. He who had received the 5 talents went at once and traded with them, and he made 5 talents more. So also he who had the 2 talents made 2 talents more. But he who had received the 1 talent went and dug in the ground and hid his master's money. Now, after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little, and I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also, who had the 2 talents, came forward, saying, Master, you delivered to me 2 talents. Here I have made 2 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over little, and I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. He also, who had received the 1 talent, came forward, saying, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow, and gathering where you scattered no seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But the master answered him, You wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I had not sowed, and I gathered where I had scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was mine with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will more be given, and he will have abundance. From him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the worthless servant into the outer darkness. There men will weep and gnash their teeth. So we can kind of see perhaps why someone might have not as easy a time to embrace this parable as some of the others, for there are troublesome elements within the scripture. It doesn't really match up with Jesus's teachings in the gospel and the ways in which Jesus spoke about God or represented God, where it talks about casting the servant out into the outer darkness, and there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And of course, we read this symbolically, but still the language is very, very harsh. Now, when we look at this metaphysically, we see that this is ourselves speaking to ourselves. This is the higher part of our being, perhaps, or sometimes our ego, taking judgment upon ourselves. But even so, this is very unusually harsh language. Another troublesome aspect is the way the servant is called unfaithful and called wicked and lazy and worthless. Again, these are not descriptions that we see Jesus using. These are not ways that we see Jesus describing those who love the Lord. And so there is a great deal of thought that part of this was added later, perhaps through the oral telling of the story, or perhaps it was added when whoever the author of the Gospel of Matthew was, added this to the story. And so we know that the parable is talking about passing out money to the servants, the master passing out money, and this is a considerable amount of money. And he puts them in charge of investing it while he's away. To one, he gives 5 talents, to another 2, and still another 1 talent. A talent is a lot of money. It's equal to 30,000 denarii. And a denarius was equal to a day's wage for a common worker. So the servant who was given 1 talent was given more money than a common worker could have earned in a lifetime. We're also told that each one of the servants that are given the money was given according to their ability. The ability belonged to the servant, but the money belonged to the master. This is the master's money. The value that is put upon the energy of money belongs to the master. And this is reminiscent of a story that I love about an elderly woman who had just finished shopping, and she returned to her car. And when she did, in the parking lot, she found 4 men sitting inside her car. So she dropped her shopping bags and drew a handgun. I think this story must have taken place in Texas. I'm not sure. She pointed the gun toward the men and screamed for them to get out of her car. And they flew out of the car like crazy. They just flew out of the car. Now, she was very shaken, this elderly woman, but she put her gun away and she gathered her shopping bags and made her way into the front seat, but her key would not fit for some reason. Then it dawned on her, this was not her car. Her car was in the next row. So she found her car and drove down to the police station to turn herself in. And as she's standing there, still very shaken, telling the story, the officer behind the desk is trying very hard not to laugh. And he points to 4 men speaking to another officer, and they're reporting a carjacking by an elderly woman. She thought it was her car, but it really belonged to someone else. We think that what we have is ours. We earned it. We worked for it. It's ours. Except that it isn't. It's all God's. Whatever talent we have, whatever skills and abilities that we have that allowed us to creatively find ways to earn our money and to purchase things, all come from source. They all come from God. We've been entrusted with it to put it to the use for God's good purpose in the world, to walk our path, to reveal and behold God the good in all. And remember, this is a parable taught by Jesus to his disciples. So to accept the call to discipleship is to accept the responsibility to see whatever we have to be used in the best interest of all. To accept the call to discipleship is to accept the reality that it all belongs to God. We've been given resources of abundance, of skills, of abilities, of our 12 powers, our expressions of Christ consciousness. We've been given the gifts of time and energy, and the energy of money, entrusted with the responsibility to use our resources for the good of God's kingdom, for the good of our sisters and brothers, for all of society, for the highest good of all. And so this parable prompts us to ask the question that we always ask in unity. Where am I in the story? How do I fit in? Which servant am I? If I'm honest, I have to admit that I'm not completely the 2 servants who doubled the master's money, nor am I completely like the servant who did nothing with it. I'm somewhere in between. Sometimes I am like the 2 faithful servants, and sometimes I am like the faithless one who did nothing with the master's money. Sometimes I am in tune and perfectly aligned with my creative being, centered, confident, and fearless in my faith, divinely guided. Other times I'm coming from a space of uncertainty, of fear. So whatever outer darkness I must walk through in this human experience, it will function to open my eyes, to see the light of God's love and grace, and enable that light to shine through me more visibly. And whatever weeping and gnashing of teeth I experience, whatever suffering I undergo, it only serves to move me along the path to gaining greater spiritual maturity, integrity, and depth of character. For if I accept that I possess within me the perfect blueprint of divinity, that transforms both how I see good things that happen in my life and those things that I call bad. Knowing too that that perfect blueprint resides within every other person. Good things such as health and talent and abundance and every area of my life, I can commit to expressing through me to the highest and greatest good of all. And things that appear to be bad things, such as disability or illness, disease, poverty, family dysfunction, failure, ended relationships can be redeemed as the very instruments that drive me to my source, drive me to God. For how many of us sought our spiritual path with greater intention after finding ourselves emotionally distraught? I am forever grateful to the personal crisis that I went through that brought me to unity. And there was much weeping and gnashing of teeth on my part. Faithful servants entrusted with God's resources must trust in the goodness of God, the very essence of God. So they are not afraid to take some risks. They're not afraid of failure. The servant who did nothing with what was entrusted with him was hampered by fear. And when he was called on the carpet, he said, I knew you to be a harsh man. And so he started blaming, seeing his master as judgmental. And anytime that we see God as judge, we tend to find ourselves as not measuring up. And so he was coming from this place of fear, seeing God as a harsh master, as judging us. And if that's how we imagine God, we will not be motivated to take risks. We will not be compelled to give our resources and our abilities and our energy and our love to others. If we're afraid of failure or afraid of God, perhaps we're committed to a sense of separation rather than our divine awareness of that indwelling spirit, then we will move in fear. We will hang on to our resources. We will perhaps be greedy with that which is ours. We will not invest our money or our time and our talents into the lives of others and for the common good. We just won't. There's another story I'd like to share about a pastor who is excited about taking his 2 visiting nephews to church. Now, the 2 boys, who were age 6 and 9, had never been to church, and for whatever reason, they were not terribly impressed. So this obviously was not a unity church. The younger one whispered to the other one, how much longer do we have to sit here? And when the offering plate was passed, he watched as he saw people putting money in the basket as it went by. And when it finally got to him, he looked up at his uncle who was on the podium and said, you mean we got to pay for this? Well, if our image of God is like the unfaithful servant in the parable, then we are likely to approach service and giving to others with the same attitude. You mean we got to pay for this? You mean we have to serve others? You mean we have to invest in this? And if that's what we think, if that's our attitude, we are more likely to stuff away that which we have rather than to use it for the highest good of all. But if we know Spirit, if we've truly experienced the essence of God and the all compassionate, internally loving being, that precious Spirit, then we are likely to take greater risk and find greater joy in investing our resources, in giving away our energy, time, and money for the good and well-being of others. And we do so freely and lovingly and joyfully and gratefully. We heard such beautiful descriptions this morning. The daily word, as Ray shared with us, passion. God is the source of all of our passion, where we boldly express our divinity. And the meditation from Sherry, opening to a new awareness, awakening to the wonder that you are, that we are, affirming our readiness, our courage, and our innate wisdom. The power of zeal inspires us to do so. And Charles Fillmore, in the Revealing Words, describes zeal like this: intensity, ardor, enthusiasm, the inward fire of the soul that urges man onward, regardless of the intellectual mind of caution and conservatism. Zeal is the mighty force that incites the winds, the tides, and the storms. It urges the planet on its course and spurs the ant to greater exertion. It is the urge behind all things. Zeal is the affirmative impulse of existence. Its command is go forward. Its command is go forward. The power of zeal is this faculty of enthusiasm, of passion, of intensity and exuberance. It provides our inner urge to progress. It's our motivation to exceed. And there's another phrase that I recently heard that connected me again in my mind to the message of the parable of the talents. And that is to be that we are each to hold the intention of being a person of increase, a person of increase. What does this mean, being a person of increase? A person of increase is one who brings great value to everything he or she does. A person of increase is one who sees expanded possibilities at every turn. A person of increase is one who lives in love and gratitude and who experiences increase in all areas of life. What is your next level of becoming? Are you feeling the divine urge from within you to express a fuller, freer, more expanded version of yourself? Are you wanting to take a deeper experience, to have a deeper experience of letting God be God in you? That is my hope always for you and for me. For I believe that this is the place. This is the place to be each week as we nurture and support one another, bursting into our next level of becoming that which we are to be, each one of us, people of increase, blessing our world with our gifts, starting here, right now. Experience the creative, talented, gifted expression of spirit, which is you. And we remember that our fifth unity principle is to act, to step forward, knowing that there's one presence and one power in the universe, and as my life, God the good, everywhere present. This knowing gives us courage and strength. In the parable of the talents event here at Unity of the Keys, we are challenged to express our divine nature, our power of imagination and creativity. And we step out in faith that we are indeed creative expressions of the one power. We are empowered by the power of zeal. We are given the opportunity to dream of expressing our creativity in a manner that others can also benefit from and enjoy. And we have forms today for those of you who may not have participated in this program before on how it works with receiving seed money for your idea. And this is the time when you're really pondering what you might do for the parable of the talents sale, what you might create or what service you might give and what you might need to do that. And you may be surprised at the talent that's waiting to be uniquely expressed through you. For this gives each one of us an opportunity to explore our special talents and to share them to the benefit of the church community. But this year, let's not stop there, but rather set the intention that this is how we will live our lives as people of increase, committed to bringing great value to everything we do, everywhere we go, wherever we are, whoever we are with. That great value is us at our best, shining our light, remembering who we are and who everyone else is, and wanting to risk a little, become a little vulnerable, to better the lives of others, wanting all to experience increase in every area of their lives, an increase in love, an increase in joy, an increase in feeling included and connected, an increase in financial stability and ease in living, an increase in overall health and well-being. Join me in this commitment, this intention to be a person of increase, starting anew today, now. And so it is. Amen.